Okay guys, let's look at another one of these T-Rex plugins. This is the EQPB. In the previous video we looked at the EQPA, and the EQPA is an emulation of the API 550A, a 3-band EQ, and this EQPB is an emulation of the bigger brother of the 550A, the 550B, which is a 4-band EQ. Okay, I've got it on this drum kit at the moment. Yeah, and as I said at the start of the previous video where we looked at the EQPA, the emulation of the API 550A, I like to think of these two APIs as the sort of yank versions of the Neve 1073 and 1081. You know, the Neve 1073 is a 3-band EQ, the Neve 1081 is the bigger brother with 4 bands, and this is the 4-band bigger brother of the API 550A, which is the 3-band. Okay, so what do we get? Well, we get 4 bands of EQ now. All of them offer 12 dB of boost or cut. On the original units, the boost or cut was in these 2 dB steps, +2 or -2, +or -4, +or -6, and then a big 3 dB jump, +or -9, +or -12. IK Multimedia gives us interim steps, so we've got finer ability to give the amount of cut or boost that we want. So we get the interim steps, so ±1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then ±7.5, ±9, ±10.5, and ±12. Okay, that's the same on all 4 bands. All bands exhibit proportional Q. The low and the high band can be switched out of shelf. Well, they're in peak by default, or they can be switched to shelf. When they're in peak, like the 2 mids, they offer a proportionate Q. The more you boost, the more you cut, the peakier that boost or cut gets, and these do get quite peaky as you get up, you know, above 6 dB of boost or cut. If you want to really hone into a particular area, or zone into a particular area rather. So 4 bands, and the thing about the APIs is those bands overlap a lot. So our low band gives us 30, 40, 50 in the low bass frequencies, then a jump to 100 Hz, which is upper end bass, very low mid crossover frequency territory, 200, 300 and 400. And then this low mid overlaps a lot with the low band there, 75, 150, 180, 240, 500, 700 or 1K. And then this upper mid overlaps a lot with this lower mid, 800, 1.5, 3K, 5K, 8K, 10K or 12K, and this also overlaps a lot with the upper band, which gives us 2.5, 5K, 7, 10, 12.5, 15 or 20K. Now, as I said, the bottom and the top bands can be switched from their default peak into shelf, which makes them quite versatile. But the whole point about this EQ, a bit like the Neve 1081, is it's about the 2 mid bands, which allow you to really focus in on the lower and upper body tonal areas of everything from, you know, drums to vocals to guitars to whatever you like. So it's all about tuning the lower and upper, mid, present and body frequencies of things, right? Okay, what else have we got? We've got an EQ in out switch, which allows you to have the plugin running but the EQ completely out. And then if you want, you can take advantage of this preamp emulation. IK Multimedia have attempted to emulate the preamp drive of the op amps in these APIs. If the preamp is out, then this gain and this output control act as a simple in and out level control. Otherwise you can use this preamp model. So if I take the EQ out completely, we can reset and then give it some drive. You're not going to get like mega distortion out of it, but you can hear it starting to drive a bit. Tends to drive the bass end a little bit more. Okay, not a lot, you know, there's not a lot of harmonic upper content in this, which you'll hear more on when we switch and listen to some guitars. You've got the option to use that if you want without the EQ at all. This just brings in your EQ. There's a phase reverse switch as well. So I will use it with that little bit of drive. And then let's look at the bands. Okay, so let's say with these drums, if we look at the bottom end now, 30, 40, 50 Hertz, these are your real low end frequencies. So in peak, I'll give that a lot of boost so we can really hear it. 30 Hertz is right down in the deep, deep bottom end. 40 a bit up from that. 50 a bit up from that again. A little bit more body now as we get up to 50. Whereas that's like sort of much more low end thud. Then there's this big jump to 100 Hertz where we start to get some very low mid crossover with bass. So a little bit of very, very deep cardboard box tone coming in there. Yeah, but because this low mid band here overlaps quite a bit with this low band, we could use 75 Hertz on the low band here. Let's knock that back to no gain at all. Which is actually just below the 100 Hertz this low band was doing previously. So that's giving us slightly lower down, deep, it's upper bass, with, you know, it's sort of strayed into bass now from very low mid, but it's not right down below in like here 50, 40, 30. So it's slightly below the 100 Hertz. And I'm exaggerating the boost a lot so you can hear it. But that's like sort of, again, deep, warm tone in that, not just bass. There's a little bit of that deep, warm tone. Or we can go up to 150. Then we're starting to get that bit of cardboard box tone coming in there. Big cardboard box, right? 75 Hertz, more bass, but still a touch of that deep, deep, low mid. I mean, so you can hear warmth, whereas these 50, 40 and 30s, you're just getting that bottom end rumble really. Now if we were to use the 75 Hertz to give us that bottom end, I could put this low band in shelf and use that at 50 or 30 or 40 to roll off the bottom end like a low, you know, it's acting as a low shelf, just to take out those real bottom end frequencies below the 75 Hertz little bump that we're giving it here, 6 dB of bump. Or not so much. Now, but the upper mid end here, if I go with 800 Hertz, that's like a woody tone. You know, it's emphasising that wood. Small cardboard box crossing over with very large plastic yogurt pot sort of tone. I'm exaggerating it a lot with a lot of boost. But roll that back a bit and it's giving me sort of upper end buckety tone to the snare. Mostly wood, but a little bit of buckety metal. Whereas if I push this to 1.5, I'm going to get it more nasal tone there. It's 1.5K is starting to cross over into this very small yogurt pot with a little bit of metallic edge starting to creep in. And up from there at 3K, we're getting into treble now. We're starting to get metallic treble. So if I wanted, I could, because again there's this crossover between this high band, this high mid and this upper band here, I might say to myself, well, I like that 3K sort of trebly edge, that bite that I'm getting from the snare. But I actually want some of that 800 wood bucketiness, upper bucketiness. Well, I can still use my high band here, say at 2.5K, and it's in peak at the moment. Give me some of that slightly more metallic crack back into the sound. Or go up a bit high to 5K, we're in metallic treble set territory now. And if I put that in shelf, it's going to boost from 5K all the way up. Give me more fizz up at the top end in the cymbal, in the hi-hat and the snare wires and all the rest of it. When I knock this out to shelf back to peak, you hear it focus more at the 5K, and that really higher end content above going away. Yeah, so let's go up to 7K with a shelf, which is bringing out the fizz, the real fizz, and everything above. So the much higher metallic, real upper treble sound of that snare and the hi-hats and the frosting above is being boosted. Then I can tune my buckety upper mid-tone here to taste, more or less. Less of it gives me a tighter thud to the snare, tighter sort of crack to the snare. More of it starts to bring on that buckety upper wooden tone and with a little bit of metal edge to it. Yeah, nice little EQ, man. I won't go with the bass on this, but let's switch to the acoustic now. This is a Martin acoustic playing in the first position. Fair bit of deep body tone. Let's have a listen. Okay, so again, let's flatten everything with the reset button, and let's look at the body tone of that acoustic. Now there's some open strings going on there, got quite a deep body tone in it. So we're going to listen to these tones with a lot of boost in peak on this low band. 100 Hertz. Well, that's very, very deep stuff. Go up to 200 though. We're starting to get some cardboard, deep cardboard box in there. And then up to 300. Smaller cardboard box, still a big one, but smaller. You know, whatever tone there. Right, but if I wanted to use this to dip down my bottom end, 100 Hertz, 50 whatever, shelf or whatever, I've still got this low mid, which go down to 75 Hertz. So let's flatten that and let's hear that. Yeah, nice warm tone, right? It's got less of the lower, very, very low mid content than that 100 Hertz. It's below that, but above the 50 this offers. Nice deep warm bottom end. I'm exaggerating the boost like mad so you can hear it. But up from there, 150. Now it's starting to get a bit boxy, big box. Not a huge difference between 180 and 150. 180 is a little bit more honky. 240 is slightly more honky again. We're just getting up into smaller and smaller size cardboard boxes here. Let me just run through these. So that's a bit sort of there. So if I dip a bit of that down, it's taking some of the warmth away, but it's dipping out that little bit of slight honk. Then below that, at 100, I can bring back some warmth here with a peak. It's quite subtle. And then I've got my upper mid here, and again, this will give me woody tone. You know, upper woody tone. 1.5 is starting to get a little edge of treble coming in on it, but it's small yogurt potty tone mostly. But that's given me some presence. It's got that little bit of yogurt potty woodiness to it. But up to 3K, it's getting more trebly now. Right, and then I'll give it some real sugar frosting up the top with a high sharp at say 12K. Very nice indeed. And then let's look at this second Martin here, which has been played up the fretboard with a capo by the sound of it. It's got less deep body tones. Here we go. Without. So I'm brightening up a bit with this. I'm giving it a little bit of this 150 here. Which is low cardboard box, but because this guitar's been played higher up the fretboard and there's less low body tones, this is more the bottom end of the tone of the body. Sort of there. Get up a bit higher and it's getting more small cardboard box crossing over into a very large plastic yogurt potty, sort of more approaching up to nasally tone, right? So that's giving me some nice sweet rounded very low mid, which is really the body of this guitar, because down the bottom there's not a lot. At 50 Hz, if I could put this in a peak, it's just really sort of rumble. At 100 you're getting more body tone, you're getting a little bit of body tone now. But it is still quite boomy and sort of non-defined, so I could use this as a shelf to roll off the bottom end. This is giving it a bit of warmth in those lower body tones, but they're quite high up. They're not in bass territory at all, they're in low mid. Now then I've got my 800 Hz, which is again that rounded upper mid fluty tone. So if I were to give it a bit, you know, a fair bit of that, it's bringing out that there, and then you know, it's raising the overall level of the guitar, lower it down a bit. I could sit it slightly lower in the mix now, right? And the 800 Hz would emphasise just under the vocal presence area. Got to 1.5K, now it's getting thinner. 3K treble coming on now. going to go with the 800, little of it, just a little of it, to give me some of that upper flute. And then up here I've got some 7K shelf, so it's boosting at 7K up. 5K gives me a bit more metallic treble edge as I go down from 7K. So something like that gives me something fairly fine, but there's some body tone at 800 and body tone at 150. And it just moves forward the speakers. It's bringing forward presence. And if I want to give it a bit of preamp drive, yeah, really nice little EQ. Very, very nice. As I say, I always think of it as the Yank equivalent of the Neve 1081. It's a 4-band EQ. And like with the 1081, the emphasis of this EQ is that you've got these overlapping bands, which makes it fairly versatile, but it's about the ability to tune into the lower and upper body tone of things with the two mids, low body and upper body tones, and with versatile crossover from the low and high bands above and below. Yeah, nice. Anyway, let's just finish up. Look at all this plugin. It's one of the T-Rex range. It has all the features that all the other T-Rex plugins have. Where it's on a stereo track, we have here by default it works in left-right mode. On a stereo track, you're EQing left and right equally, or you can EQ left and right differently, or you can do mid-side processing. Right? There's a reset button to quickly reset everything back to nothing. Really useful. As I said, the EQ switch is there if you want to just use the preamp drive emulation without the EQ. You've got an undo and redo pair of buttons here, which are really useful. Like what I just did, the last tweaks I just did, I could undo, 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 and then redo, 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 and go back to where I was. Right? And then you got this wonderful bank copying and pasting thing here. So this sound I've set up for the acoustic, it's in bank B, so I can now copy that and paste it to A, C, or D. Let's paste it into A. And then I could change A. I could say, well, on A, I'm going to have 2.5K upper end shelf boost there. And I'm going to dip the 800 down a bit and give it some 240 higher up mid, but I'll leave the bottom end the same. And on the fly, I can just switch between the two and listen to the difference. It's fantastic. You can have 4 of those. Yeah, really, really useful. On the fly, in context, hearing the instrument in the music, you can switch between different EQ settings. Yes, no, yeah, I'll have that one, and choose one of them, and bing, bang, bong, you're done. Really, really useful. So yeah, there you go. That's the emulation of the API 550B from IK Multimedia T-Rex. One of the T-Rex plugin range. They're excellent, excellent little plugins. As I said, if I had to come up with a way to describe the difference between these APIs and the Neves in the same T-Rex range, the APIs are sort of more grainy, slightly more grainy, a little bit more bite to them, if anything. Yeah, that does. Maybe the Neve's slightly smoother, but that doesn't mean that one is better than the other. These have really good ability to bring presence out of things. Just a little touch of some present frequencies on a particular instrument will just lift it out of a mix. Or you can do very, very, very creative, extreme EQing, whatever you like. Yeah, really, really useful little EQ. Part of the T-Rex range. I hope that's useful, and I'll see you for the next one.